In a vast expanse of the galactic court, where alien royalty from 1,000 worlds gather to display their might and magic, one human stands quietly beside his beloved wife. They whisper that he's weak, that he's nothing more than a pet from a primitive world. The Queen Mother's cruel laughter echoes through marble halls as she mocks Princess Zara's choice in a mate. The princes sneer at his lack of claws, fangs, or psychic powers. But they don't know about Earth. They don't know what happens when you threaten a human's family. They don't know that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that doesn't look like a predator at all. When the ancient enemy returns to claim the throne, and the royal family cowers in fear when their magic fails and their strength crumbles, when hope seems lost and darkness falls, that's when they'll discover what humanity truly means. That's when Marcus Chun will show them why his species conquered a world of apex predators and reached for the stars. This is the story of how one human's love became a legend, and how Earth's children earned their place among the stars not through submission, but through strength. The crystal spires of the Valdorian royal palace stretched toward the three moons like fingers grasping at starlight. Marcus Chun stood on the balcony of his wife's chambers, watching the courtyard below, where alien dignitaries from across the galaxy mingled in preparation for tomorrow's coronation ceremony. His dark hair moved slightly in the evening breeze as he observed the gathering, his brown eyes taking in details that others might miss. "Still watching them, my love?" Princess Zara's voice carried the musical quality that had first captivated him 3 years ago on the diplomatic station where they'd met. Her skin held the pale blue luminescence of her people, and the silver markings along her arms pulsed gently with her emotions. At 7 feet tall, she towered over most beings, but Marcus had never felt intimidated by her height. If anything, her strength had drawn him to her like a moth to flame. "Just thinking," Marcus replied, not turning from the balcony. Below, he could see Queen Mother Valana holding court near the fountain, her elaborate headdress catching the light as she gestured dramatically. Even from this distance, he could hear her sharp laughter cutting through the evening air. Zara moved to stand beside him, her hand finding his shoulder. "She's talking about you again." It wasn't a question. They both knew what occupied the Queen Mother's conversations these days. Ever since Zara had announced her intention to marry a human, the royal court had been buzzing with gossip, speculation, and barely concealed contempt. "Let her talk," Marcus said quietly. "Words can't hurt me." But Zara's markings darkened to deep purple, betraying her anger. "They should show you respect. You're to be my consort, a member of the royal family." Marcus finally turned to face his wife, taking in the fierce beauty that had made him fall in love with her. "Respect has to be earned, Zara. I knew what I was walking into when I accepted your proposal." The memory of that day still made him smile. Contrary to human customs, it had been Zara who proposed, following Valdorian tradition where the higher-ranked partner initiated the bonding. She had knelt before him in the garden of the diplomatic station, offering him a crystal that pulsed with her life force, asking him to share his existence with hers. "You shouldn't have to earn anything," Zara said fiercely. "You're brilliant, kind, brave, and completely powerless by their standards," Marcus finished. "I have no telepathic abilities, no enhanced strength, no magical talents. To them, I'm just a clever pet you picked up during your travels." The sound of approaching footsteps made them both turn. Prince Theron, Zara's eldest brother and heir to the throne, emerged onto the balcony. His imposing frame filled the doorway, muscles rippling beneath skin that shimmered like liquid metal. The crown prince possessed the rare ability to shift his molecular density, making him nearly invulnerable in combat. "Sister," Theron nodded to Zara before his golden eyes fixed on Marcus. "Human." "Brother," Zara replied coolly. "Have you come to offer congratulations on our upcoming bonding ceremony?" Theron's laugh rumbled like distant thunder. "I've come to speak sense to you before it's too late." He gestured toward Marcus without looking at him. "This creature will be a liability to our house. When the other royal families see that Princess Zara has bound herself to something so weak, they'll question our family's judgment. Our strength." Marcus felt the familiar tightness in his chest that came with these confrontations, but he kept his expression neutral. 3 years of diplomatic training on various worlds had taught him the value of emotional control. "Weak." Zara stepped closer to her brother, her markings now blazing with silver fire. "You know nothing of his strength. I know he can't even defend himself, let alone you. Theron's voice carried the arrogance that came with a lifetime of physical superiority. Watch. Without warning, the prince moved with lightning speed, his hand shooting toward Marcus's throat. It should have been a simple demonstration of the human's helplessness, a quick grab to prove his point. Marcus's body reacted before his mind fully processed the threat. Years of mixed martial arts training on Earth, combined with enhanced reflexes developed through zero-gravity combat simulations, kicked in automatically. He sidestepped the grab, caught Theron's wrist, and used the prince's own momentum to send him stumbling forward. For a moment, the balcony fell silent except for the sound of Theron catching himself against the railing. The prince turned slowly, surprise flickering across his features. "Interesting," Theron said, straightening his ceremonial robes. "But parlor tricks won't save you when real danger comes calling." "Real danger?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious. "What kind of real danger are you expecting at a coronation ceremony?" Theron's expression darkened. "You really don't understand, do you? Tomorrow, when Father officially names me heir, we'll be at our most vulnerable. Every rival house, every enemy of the crown, every ambitious fool with delusions of power will see opportunity. And they'll target the weakest links in our family first." He looked pointedly at Marcus. "That's you, human. You're the soft spot they'll press to make us bleed." The prince swept past them toward the door, pausing only to address his sister. "It's not too late to dissolve this foolish bonding and choose a proper mate. Someone who can actually protect you instead of hiding behind your skirts." After Theron left, Zara's markings pulsed with barely contained fury. "He had no right to touch you. He wasn't wrong about one thing," Marcus said thoughtfully. "I'm the obvious weak point. If someone wanted to hurt your family, threatening me would be the logical choice. You're not weak." Zara's voice carried absolute conviction. "You're the strongest person I know." Marcus smiled at her fierce loyalty. "Physically, your brother is right. I can't match any of you in direct combat. I don't have claws or fangs or the ability to manipulate matter with my mind." "Then, why aren't you worried?" Marcus looked back toward the courtyard, where the gathering had grown larger as more dignitaries arrived for tomorrow's ceremony. His eyes found Queen Mother Valana again, still holding court near the fountain, her voice carrying clearly in the night air as she regaled her audience with what sounded like another story about her daughter's poor choice in mates. "Because they're making the same mistake your brother just made," Marcus said quietly. "They're assuming that just because I don't fight like them, I can't fight at all." Zara followed his gaze. "What do you mean? On Earth, we have a saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog." Marcus turned to face his wife, and, for just a moment, she saw something in his dark eyes that made her markings flicker with uncertainty. "Your people have been the apex predators on your world for so long that you've forgotten what it's like to be prey. You've forgotten what prey learns to survive." Before Zara could ask what he meant, the sound of shattering crystal echoed from the courtyard below. Both of them rushed to the balcony edge to see what had happened. In the center of the gathering, where Queen Mother Valana had been entertaining her audience, a dark figure stood amid the scattered remains of the crystal fountain. The being was humanoid, but wrong in ways that made the eye want to look away. Its skin seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and when it moved, reality seemed to bend around it like heat waves. "Shadow Walker," Zara breathed, her face going pale blue with fear. Marcus had heard stories of the Shadow Walkers during his time at the diplomatic station. Ancient beings from the void between stars. They were said to exist partially outside normal space-time. They couldn't be killed by conventional weapons because they weren't entirely present in this dimension. The creature's voice echoed strangely, as if coming from multiple directions at once. "Queen Mother Valana of House Valdorian, you are hereby summoned to account for the crimes of your bloodline." The gathered dignitaries scattered like leaves in a hurricane, their various forms of flight, teleportation, and enhanced speed carrying them away from the courtyard in moments. Only the royal guards remained, forming a protective circle around the Queen Mother with weapons drawn. "What crimes?" Queen Mother Valana demanded, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "House Valdorian has committed no violations of cosmic law." The Shadow Walker tilted its head in a gesture that somehow conveyed both curiosity and menace. 10,000 years ago, your ancestors participated in the genocide of our people. The debt remains unpaid." "That was 10 millennia ago," one of the guards shouted. "No one alive today bears responsibility for those actions." Guilt passes through bloodlines like genetic memory, the creature replied. The debt must be paid in royal blood, or we will claim this world and all who dwell upon it. Marcus watched as the guards opened fire with energy weapons that should have been capable of reducing a mountain to dust. The beams passed harmlessly through the Shadow Walker, as if it were made of smoke. How long do we have? Queen Mother Valana asked, her diplomatic training keeping her voice level. 3 cycles of your primary star, the Shadow Walker replied. If no royal blood volunteers for judgment by then, we will begin harvesting. The creature began to fade, becoming translucent as it prepared to depart. Wait, Queen Mother Valana called out. What form would this judgment take? The Shadow Walker paused in its departure. Single combat. One of royal blood against our champion. If your representative wins, the debt is forgiven. If they lose, it made a sound that might have been laughter. The debt is paid in full. With that, the creature vanished completely, leaving only the scattered crystal fragments and the acrid smell of ozone to prove it had been there at all. Marcus and Zara rushed down to the courtyard, arriving just as King Valdrian himself appeared along with Princes Theron and Kex. The royal family gathered around Queen Mother Valana, who was examining the crystal fragments with a grim expression. Mother, are you harmed? King Valdrian asked, his massive frame radiating concern. Like all Valdorian males, he stood over 8 feet tall and possessed enough physical strength to crush steel with his bare hands. I'm uninjured, the Queen Mother replied. But we have a problem. Prince Kex, the youngest of the royal sons, kicked at a crystal fragment with his clawed foot. Shadow Walkers are myths. Stories to frighten children. That was no myth, Queen Mother Valana said firmly. I could feel the wrongness of it, the way it existed between dimensions. The ancient records speak truth about their kind. King Valdrian's expression grew troubled. If the Shadow Walkers seek vengeance for the Void War, then we face an enemy that cannot be defeated through conventional means. What's the Void War? Marcus asked. The royal family turned to look at him, and Marcus realized they had forgotten he was there. Prince Theron's expression showed clear annoyance that the human had dared to speak. Ancient history, Theron said dismissively. Nothing that concerns you. But King Valdrian held up a hand, silencing his son. Actually, it may concern him greatly if he's to be part of this family. The king's voice carried the weight of centuries as he explained. 10,000 years ago, the Shadow Walkers attempted to invade our dimension. They sought to consume the life force of entire worlds to fuel their existence between realities. A coalition of species fought them back at tremendous cost. Our ancestors led that coalition, Queen Mother Valana added. House Valdorian was instrumental in sealing the Shadow Walkers in the void between dimensions. So they weren't destroyed, Marcus said, understanding dawning. They couldn't be destroyed, King Valdrian confirmed. They exist partially outside our reality. The best we could do was trap them where they couldn't reach populated worlds. Prince Kex's tail lashed nervously behind him. But if they found a way back, then someone must face their champion in single combat, Queen Mother Valana said grimly. And it must be someone of royal blood. The family fell silent as the implications sank in. Marcus watched their faces, seeing the fear they were trying to hide. These beings who had seemed so powerful, so confident in their superiority, were suddenly confronted with an enemy they couldn't simply overpower. I'll do it, Prince Theron said finally. I'm the strongest warrior in our family. If anyone could defeat their champion, it's me. Your molecular shifting might not work against a being that exists partially outside our dimension, King Valdrian pointed out. Then I'll adapt, Theron replied. I've never met an enemy I couldn't defeat in honest combat. Marcus cleared his throat softly, drawing their attention again. May I ask what you know about Shadow Walker champions? Prince Theron's golden eyes flashed with irritation. What could you possibly know about beings from a void? Nothing, Marcus admitted freely. But I know something about enemies that seem impossible to defeat. On Earth, we have extensive experience fighting opponents who are stronger, faster, or more heavily armed than we are. This isn't some primitive tribal conflict, Prince Kex scoffed. This is cosmic-level warfare. The principles are the same, Marcus said calmly. When you can't match your enemy's strengths, you have to exploit their weaknesses. King Valdrian studied the human with new interest. What weaknesses could a Shadow Walker have? Marcus gestured to the crystal fragments scattered around them. It was solid enough to break this fountain. That means it has to become fully present in our dimension to interact with physical objects. And if it can become physical, it can be hurt. Queen Mother Valana finished, her expression thoughtful. Exactly, Marcus said. The question becomes, how do you force a being that can phase between dimensions to remain solid long enough to be vulnerable? Prince Theron stepped closer to Marcus. His imposing height meant to intimidate. You speak as if you have experience with such creatures. Marcus met the prince's gaze steadily. I have experience with asymmetric warfare. Sometimes the victory goes not to the strongest, but to the one who thinks differently about the problem. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the palace complex. Emergency lights bathed the courtyard in red as guards rushed to defensive positions. What now? King Valdrian demanded. A guard captain materialized beside them, his face grim. My lord, we have multiple contacts approaching through hyperspace. Unknown vessels, massive energy signatures. The royal family looked at each other with growing alarm. First the Shadow Walker's ultimatum, now an approaching fleet. The coincidence was too convenient to ignore. Could they be allied with the Shadow Walkers? Zara asked. Possible, King Valdrian said grimly. Or they could be other enemies taking advantage of our apparent weakness. Marcus watched the interplay of fear and determination across their alien features. These beings who had mocked him as weak were now facing threats that their physical strength couldn't simply overwhelm. He thought of his conversation with Zara earlier about predators and prey, about what it meant to be hunted. Tomorrow was supposed to be Prince Theron's coronation as official heir. Instead, it might be the beginning of a war that would determine the fate of not just the royal family, but their entire world. As the alarms continued to wail and the first distant explosions lit the night sky, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He stepped forward, his voice calm despite the chaos erupting around them. Your Majesty, he said to King Valdrian, I formally request permission to represent House Valdorian in single combat against the Shadow Walker champion. The courtyard fell silent except for the distant sounds of battle beginning in the space above their world. Every member of the royal family stared at Marcus as if he had just declared his intention to fly by flapping his arms. Prince Theron was the first to break the silence, his laughter sharp and cruel. You want to fight a cosmic-level entity in single combat? You couldn't even defend yourself against me 5 minutes ago. I didn't need to defend myself, Marcus replied quietly. You weren't actually trying to hurt me. The distinction was subtle but important, and King Valdrian caught it immediately. The king's ancient eyes studied Marcus with new intensity, seeing something in the human that the others were missing. Queen Mother Valana stepped closer, her luminescent markings pulsing with curiosity rather than mockery. Child of Earth, she said formally, you cannot possibly understand what you're volunteering for. Shadow Walker champions are beings of pure nightmare, entities that have existed since the first stars burned. They are destruction incarnate. Marcus nodded respectfully. I understand the stakes, Your Majesty, but I also understand something that your people may have forgotten. And what's that? She asked. Marcus looked around at the royal family, these beings of incredible power who suddenly seemed very young and very afraid. When he spoke, his voice carried quiet conviction that somehow cut through the chaos around them. Sometimes, the most dangerous opponent isn't the strongest one. Sometimes, it's the one who has nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Above them, the first enemy ships broke through the planet's outer defenses, their weapons lighting up the night sky. The real battle was about to begin, and Marcus Chun was about to show an alien royal family exactly what it meant to be human. The war room beneath the Valdorian royal palace hummed with activity as holographic displays showed the unfolding battle in space above. Marcus stood beside Zara, watching alien symbols and tactical data flow across screens he couldn't read, while the royal family debated their response to both the Shadow Walker ultimatum and the surprise attack. 17 enemy dreadnoughts, and counting, Admiral Korthax reported, his serpentine form coiled around the central command console. They're using some kind of phase technology that makes our targeting systems useless. Our fleet is taking heavy casualties. King Valdrian's massive fist slammed into the metal table, leaving a dent in the reinforced surface. How did they penetrate our early warning systems? Our sensors should have detected them long before they reached the outer rim. The same way the Shadow Walker appeared in our courtyard. Marcus said quietly. All eyes turned to him, and he could feel the mixture of curiosity and skepticism radiating from the assembled military leaders. They're using dimensional phasing. They're not traveling through normal space. Admiral Corthax's scaled head swiveled toward Marcus, his reptilian eyes narrowing. The human speaks of things beyond his understanding. Does he? Queen Mother Valana asked thoughtfully. She had been unusually quiet since Marcus's offer to fight the Shadow Walker champion, studying him with an intensity that made Zara shift nervously beside him. Marcus, explain your reasoning. Marcus stepped closer to the holographic display, pointing to the scattered enemy formations. Look at their attack pattern. They're not moving like a conventional fleet. See how they appear and disappear seemingly at random? They're not bound by normal tactical considerations because they can phase in and out of our dimension. Prince Theron scoffed. Even if that were true, what difference does it make? We can't fight enemies we can't hit. Actually, you can, Marcus said. But not the way you're thinking about it. He gestured to the display showing their own fleet's formation. Your ships are trying to engage them in direct combat, matching strength against strength. But if they can phase between dimensions, direct combat plays to their advantage. What would you suggest? King Valdrian asked, his tone suggesting genuine curiosity despite his son's obvious disapproval. Marcus studied the tactical display for a moment, noting the positions of both fleets and the planetary defense installations. On Earth, we have a concept called area denial. Instead of trying to target individual ships, you target the space they want to occupy. Admiral Corthax's tongue flicked out, tasting the air. Elaborate. Dimensional phasing requires precise calculations, Marcus explained. If you can disrupt the local space-time matrix with widespread energy discharges, you can force them to remain in our dimension or risk materializing inside solid matter. The war room fell silent as the assembled military leaders considered this strategy. Finally, Admiral Corthax spoke. The gravitational pulse generators. If we synchronize them across all defense platforms, it would create overlapping fields of space-time distortion. King Valdrian finished, understanding dawning in his ancient eyes. They'd have to choose between staying phased and being torn apart by the gravitational shears, or materializing where we can target them. Prince Theron stepped closer to Marcus, his golden eyes flashing with something that might have been respect. That's actually clever. Where did you learn this? Military history, Marcus replied. Earth has been fighting wars for thousands of years. When you're always outnumbered and outgunned, you learn to think creatively. Admiral Corthax was already issuing orders to implement the strategy when new alarms began blaring. A communications officer looked up from her station, her face pale with fear. My lords, we're receiving a transmission from the enemy fleet. They're demanding to speak with the royal family. King Valdrian nodded grimly. Put it through. The main holographic display flickered, replacing the tactical readouts with the image of a being that made even the Shadow Walker seem normal by comparison. It appeared to be made of living metal, its features constantly shifting and reforming as if it couldn't decide what shape to take. Greetings, House Valdorian, the creature said, its voice like the sound of grinding gears. I am Construct Prime, herald of the Machine Collective. We have come to collect our wayward brother. Queen Mother Valana stepped forward, her diplomatic training overriding her fear. Brother? We have no knowledge of any Machine Collective member on our world. The creature's face shifted into what might have been a smile. The one you call Marcus Chun. He bears the neural patterns of our lost champion, stolen during the Great Convergence. We have come to reclaim him. Every head in the war room turned to stare at Marcus, who stood frozen with shock. Zara's markings flickered through a rapid spectrum of colors, betraying her confusion and growing alarm. I don't know what you're talking about, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting in his mind. I'm human. I was born on Earth. Flesh is merely a container, Construct Prime replied. The neural matrix within your organic brain contains patterns that belong to us. Patterns that were lost when our champion fell in battle against the Shadow Walkers 10,000 years ago. Prince Kex stepped forward, his claws extending instinctively. You're saying Marcus is some kind of machine? Not a machine, the creature corrected. A repository. When our champion was destroyed, his consciousness was scattered across the dimensional barriers. Fragments of his knowledge, his tactical genius, his strategic insights were scattered randomly throughout the universe. Most were lost forever. Marcus felt as if the ground had dropped away beneath him. You're saying I'm carrying the memories of your dead champion? Not memories, Construct Prime said. Instincts, patterns of thought, the ability to see warfare from perspectives that purely organic minds cannot comprehend. That is why you can devise strategies that confound beings far more advanced than your species. The implications hit the war room like a physical blow. If Marcus truly carried fragments of an ancient machine collective champion's consciousness, it would explain his uncanny tactical insights. But it also meant he wasn't entirely human. Even if this is true, King Valdrian said slowly, Marcus is a member of our family now. We will not surrender him to you. Construct Prime's form shifted, becoming more angular and threatening. You misunderstand the nature of this situation. We are not requesting. We are informing you of our intent. The neural patterns will be extracted, with or without the cooperation of the organic vessel. Over my dead body, Zara snarled, her markings blazing with silver fire as she stepped protectively in front of Marcus. That can be arranged, the creature replied coldly. Before anyone could respond, another voice cut through the transmission, ancient, terrible, and filled with malevolent amusement. How touching. A family reunion interrupted by old enemies. The Shadow Walker materialized in the center of the war room, its presence causing the temperature to drop and the lights to flicker. Marcus felt something stir in the back of his mind, a cold recognition that seemed to come from somewhere other than his own memories. Void spawn, Construct Prime hissed, his form reshaping into something more combat-ready. You dare show yourself while we conduct our business? Your business. The Shadow Walker's laugh echoed from multiple dimensions. The organic vessel contains fragments of our greatest enemy. If anyone has claim to those neural patterns, it is us. We were defeated by their original owner. Marcus backed against the wall, pulling Zara with him as the two cosmic entities faced each other across the war room. The royal family and their military advisors scrambled for cover as reality began to warp around the confrontation. You will not have him, Construct Prime declared, energy weapons materializing from his metallic form. Nor will you, the Shadow Walker replied, darkness spreading across the floor like spilled ink. That's when Marcus felt it, a sudden rush of knowledge that definitely wasn't his own. Tactical assessments flooded his mind, showing him the strengths and weaknesses of both entities. The Machine Collective Herald was powerful, but relied on conventional physics. The Shadow Walker was nearly invulnerable, but had to maintain dimensional coherence to interact with this reality. More importantly, he suddenly understood why they were both here. It wasn't just about reclaiming lost fragments of consciousness. It was about preventing those fragments from being used against them. Stop, Marcus said, his voice carrying an authority that surprised everyone, including himself. Both cosmic entities paused their preparations for battle, turning to look at him with expressions of curiosity and wariness. You're both afraid, Marcus continued, stepping away from the wall despite Zara's attempt to hold him back. You're not here to reclaim or extract anything. You're here because you're terrified that I might actually succeed in defeating your Shadow Walker champion. The temperature in the room seemed to drop even further as both entities focused their attention on him. Marcus could feel alien thoughts pressing against his mind, trying to read his intentions. Explain, Construct Prime demanded. Marcus gestured to the tactical displays, still showing the battle above. Your fleets aren't here to capture me or extract neural patterns. They're here to eliminate the possibility that these fragments might be used against you, because you both know something that the royal family doesn't. He turned to face King Valdrian, seeing understanding begin to dawn in the ancient monarch's eyes. The debt that the Shadow Walkers claim isn't about genocide 10,000 years ago. It's about something else entirely. Queen Mother Vallana stepped closer, her diplomatic instincts recognizing the shift in dynamics. What debt? The Shadow Walker's form seemed to ripple with anger. The debt of victory. When their champion fell in battle against us, his final act created a quantum lock on our dimensional prison. We cannot escape back to our home dimension until that lock is broken. And breaking the lock requires defeating the consciousness that created it. Marcus finished, understanding flooding through him with certainty that came from fragmentary memories, not his own. That's why you need single combat. It's not about honor or tradition. It's about quantum mechanics. The lock can only be broken by defeating the mind that set it. Construct Prime's form shifted to something resembling approval. The organic vessel understands more than we anticipated. But here's what you're both missing. Marcus continued, feeling the fragments of ancient knowledge aligning with his own tactical training. The lock wasn't designed to keep the Shadow Walkers imprisoned. It was designed to prevent them from returning to their home dimension until they learned something. Both entities went very still, their attention focused entirely on Marcus now. The Machine Collective Champion wasn't trying to punish the Shadow Walkers. Marcus said, the truth becoming clear as buried memories surfaced. He was trying to teach them that there are other ways to exist, other sources of energy, other purposes beyond consuming life force from inhabited worlds. Impossible, the Shadow Walker hissed. We are creatures of the void. We consume or we die. No, Marcus said firmly. You consume because it's all you've ever known. But there are stars between the galaxies, empty space teeming with energy that belongs to no one. The champion tried to show you that before you destroyed him. Prince Theron stepped forward, confusion clear in his voice. How can you know any of this? Marcus turned to face the royal family, seeing their mixture of fear and fascination. Because I'm remembering it, not as a human who learned about it, but as someone who was there when it happened. The implications of that statement hit everyone at once. If Marcus truly carried the consciousness fragments of the Machine Collective Champion, then he wasn't just a repository of tactical knowledge. He was, in some sense, the being who had originally faced the Shadow Walkers in combat 10,000 years ago. Which brings us to the real question, Marcus said, looking directly at the Shadow Walker. Are you here to continue a war that should have ended millennia ago? Or are you finally ready to learn what your champion was trying to teach you? The Shadow Walker's form wavered, uncertainty replacing its earlier menace. You speak as if you remember our battle. I remember enough, Marcus replied. I remember that you weren't always creatures of pure consumption. I remember that you once had a civilization, art, literature, philosophy. I remember that you chose to become predators because you were afraid of extinction. The war room was dead silent now. Even the distant sounds of the space battle seeming to fade as everyone waited for the Shadow Walker's response. We lost our home dimension to entropy, the creature said finally. We had to feed on other realities to survive. Or so you believed, Marcus said gently. But entropy isn't the end. It's a transition. The energy is still there. It's just distributed differently. Your champion was trying to show you how to feed on that energy instead of life force. Construct Prime's form shifted to something resembling confusion. If this is true, then our pursuit of the neural patterns is unnecessary, Marcus finished. Because the real value isn't in the tactical knowledge or the strategic insights. It's in the understanding that was lost when your champion fell. He looked around the war room, taking the faces of the royal family and their advisors. The question now is whether everyone's ready to stop fighting and start learning. The Shadow Walker began to move toward Marcus, its form becoming more solid and defined. If you truly carry our champion's understanding, then prove it. Show us this other way you speak of. Marcus felt the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. Above them, two fleets continued their deadly dance while below, representatives of three ancient civilizations waited for his next words. The fragments of memory in his mind were clearer now, showing him glimpses of technologies and techniques that seemed almost miraculous. I can show you, Marcus said. But not here, not in the middle of a battle. The demonstration requires precise conditions and complete focus. You ask us to trust you, the Shadow Walker observed. I'm asking you to trust the part of your champion that still exists, Marcus corrected. The part that never wanted to destroy you, only to save you from yourselves. Queen Mother Vallana stepped forward, her diplomatic instincts engaged fully now. If both fleets withdraw to a safe distance, House Valdorian will provide a neutral location for this demonstration. Construct Prime's form rippled with what might have been amusement. And if the demonstration fails? Marcus met the creature's gaze steadily. Then, I'll face your Shadow Walker champion in single combat as originally agreed. But I think you'll find that won't be necessary. The Shadow Walker tilted its head, considering. Very well. But know this fragment of our enemy. If you are deceiving us, the consequences will extend far beyond this single world. I understand, Marcus replied. But I think you'll find that the real deception was believing you had to be enemies in the first place. As the cosmic entities began coordinating the withdrawal of their fleets, Marcus caught Zara's hand and squeezed it gently. She looked up at him with a mixture of love and concern. "Are you still you?" she asked quietly. Marcus considered the question seriously. He could feel the foreign memories and instincts moving through his mind, but they felt like tools rather than replacements for his own thoughts. "I'm still me," he said finally, "but I'm also more than I was. And that might be enough to prevent a war that's been going on for 10,000 years. Outside, the sounds of battle began to fade as the fleets pulled back to observe rather than destroy. For the first time since the Shadow Walker's appearance, there was hope that tomorrow might bring understanding instead of death. But Marcus knew that the hardest part was still ahead. Proving his claims would require more than just recovered memories. It would require him to access technologies and techniques that pushed the boundaries of what was possible, even for beings who had mastered interstellar travel. As the war room began to empty and plans were made for the demonstration, Marcus found himself wondering if he really was still the same human who had fallen in love with an alien princess 3 years ago, or if he had become something new entirely. The answer to that question might determine the fate of civilizations. The ancient amphitheater carved into the mountainside had been chosen for its isolation and its historical significance. According to Valdorian records, it was here that the first peace treaty between the major galactic powers had been signed 3,000 years ago. Now, as dawn broke over the crystalline peaks, it would serve as the stage for what might be the most important demonstration in cosmic history. Marcus stood in the center of the amphitheater, surrounded by representatives from 3 of the most powerful civilizations in known space. The Shadow Walker had taken a position near the eastern wall, its form more stable than Marcus had seen before, as if the promise of resolution had given it renewed coherence. Construct Prime hovered above the western seating area, his metallic body reflecting the morning light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The Valdorian royal family occupied the traditional seats of honor, with King Valdrian's massive form dominating the central platform. Queen Mother Valana sat to his right, her luminescent markings pulsing with nervous energy, while Princess Zura had claimed the seat directly behind Marcus, her fierce loyalty evident in every line of her posture. Prince Theron stood apart from the family grouping, his golden eyes fixed on Marcus with an expression that combined skepticism, curiosity, and something that might have been growing respect. Prince Kex paced nervously behind the seats, his clawed feet clicking against the stone as his tail lashed with anxiety. "Before we begin," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly in the perfect acoustics of the amphitheater, "I need everyone to understand what you're about to see. The memories I've recovered aren't complete, and some of the techniques I'm attempting haven't been performed in 10,000 years. There's a significant chance this demonstration will fail. And if it does?" Construct Prime asked, his mechanical voice echoing strangely. "Then, we proceed with the original plan," Marcus replied. "Single combat between myself and the Shadow Walker champion. But I believe that outcome can be avoided if we're willing to challenge our assumptions about the nature of existence itself." The Shadow Walker moved closer, its form rippling with what seemed like anticipation. "Show us this miracle you claim to possess." Marcus nodded and reached into the small satchel he'd brought with him. From it, he withdrew what appeared to be an ordinary piece of crystal, no larger than his fist. To the assembled observers, it looked completely unremarkable. "This is a fragment of Valdorian memory crystal," Marcus explained, holding the stone up to catch the morning light. "Your people use them to store historical records and cultural knowledge. But, according to the memories I've recovered, they can be modified to serve a very different purpose." He knelt in the center of the amphitheater and placed the crystal on the ancient stone floor. Then, closing his eyes, he began to access the fragmentary memories that had been awakening in his mind since the previous night. The knowledge came slowly at first, like trying to remember a dream upon waking. Gradually, though, the techniques became clearer. Mathematical formulas that described the relationship between matter and energy at the quantum level. Engineering principles that treated space-time itself as a manipulable medium. Philosophical concepts that redefined the very meaning of existence. Marcus placed his hands on either side of the crystal and began to channel energy through it. Not the crude bioelectric current that humans naturally generated, but something far more sophisticated. The crystal began to glow, not with reflected light, but with its own internal illumination. Impossible pas qu'exbrited. Only our most powerful mages can activate memory crystals without technological assistance. He's not activating it, Queen Mother Valana said quietly. He's transforming it. She was right. As Marcus continued to channel energy through the crystal, its molecular structure was changing. The regular lattice that made it useful for storing information was becoming something entirely different. Complex geometric patterns began forming within the stone, creating structures that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. It's a dimensional resonator, Construct Prime said, his voice filled with something that might have been awe. We theorized such devices were possible, but the energy requirements aren't as high as you think, Marcus said, opening his eyes but maintaining his focus on the crystal. The universe wants to achieve harmony between dimensions. You just have to show it how. The crystal had grown to twice its original size and was now floating several inches above the floor. Within its transformed structure, patterns of light moved in ways that defied conventional physics. Sometimes the light seemed to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Other times it appeared to move backward through time. This device can tap into the quantum foam that exists between dimensions, Marcus explained. It's a source of unlimited energy that doesn't require consuming life force or matter from inhabited systems. The Shadow Walker moved even closer, its form becoming more solid as its attention focused entirely on the floating crystal. You speak of energy that belongs to no one. Energy that belongs to everyone, Marcus corrected. The quantum foam is part of the fundamental structure of reality. It exists everywhere, in every dimension, in quantities that make the total energy output of all the stars in all the galaxies seem insignificant by comparison. To demonstrate, Marcus reached out and touched the crystal with his index finger. Immediately, the patterns of light within it began moving faster, and a visible aura of energy formed around both Marcus and the device. The energy didn't feel hot or cold, electrical or magnetic. It felt like pure potential, waiting to be shaped by will and intention. The original Machine Collective champion discovered this technique during his final battle with the Shadow Walkers. Marcus continued, his voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to come from the crystal itself. He realized that the war between your peoples wasn't about territory or resources. It was about fear. Fear of extinction. Fear of insignificance. Fear that there wasn't enough energy in the universe for everyone to survive. He gestured to the crystal, which was now projecting holographic images into the air above the amphitheater. The images showed galaxies and nebulae, but also spaces between them where the naked eye saw only emptiness. In those spaces, the crystal revealed vast networks of energy flowing in patterns too complex for organic minds to fully comprehend. But there's enough, Marcus said simply. There's more than enough. There's so much energy available that every civilization in the universe could advance to post-scarcity status without affecting the total supply by any measurable amount. Construct Prime descended from his position above the seating area, his metallic form reconfiguring itself as he approached the crystal. The resonance patterns, they're showing energy states that shouldn't exist in our dimensional framework. They exist in every dimensional framework, Marcus replied. That's what makes them accessible to beings from different realities. A Shadow Walker can tap the same energy sources as a Machine Collective construct or a biological organism. The technique adapts to the user's nature. To prove his point, Marcus stepped back from the crystal and gestured for the Shadow Walker to approach. The dark entity moved forward cautiously, its form shifting between solid and translucent as it examined the device. Touch it, Marcus encouraged. Feel the energy for yourself. The Shadow Walker extended what might have been a hand toward the crystal. The moment it made contact, the patterns of light within the device changed dramatically. What had been pure white when Marcus controlled them, they now showed deep purples and black shot through with silver highlights. The energy output increased noticeably, but its nature remained benevolent rather than destructive. It responds to our quantum signature, the Shadow Walker said, wonder evident in its voice despite the alien nature of its speech. We can feel the energy flowing through our form, but it doesn't diminish. It grows stronger the more we draw from it. Because you're not taking energy from anything, Marcus explained. You're converting potential into kinetic, emptiness into fullness. You're participating in the fundamental creative process of a universe instead of consuming its products. Prince Theron stepped down from the seating area, his expression showing more amazement than Marcus had ever seen from the normally arrogant prince. This is what our ancestors were fighting to protect. This knowledge, not to protect, Marcus corrected, to share. The Machine Collective champion wasn't trying to hoard this discovery. He was trying to teach it to everyone, including the Shadow Walkers. The tragedy was that the war ended before the lesson could be completed. Queen Mother Vallana rose from her seat, her diplomatic training warring with the implications of what she was witnessing. If this technique can be learned by others, then no one needs to be enemies anymore, Marcus finished. Scarcity becomes abundance. Competition becomes cooperation. War becomes unnecessary because there's enough for everyone to have everything they need. Construct Prime had begun scanning the crystal with sophisticated sensors that emerged from his metallic body. The mathematical principles are elegant, almost simple once you understand the underlying framework. Why was this knowledge lost? Marcus felt a wave of sadness wash through him, coming from the recovered memories of the ancient champion. Because the being who discovered it was destroyed before he could properly document it. The technique survived only as fragmentary memories, scattered across dimensional barriers and lost until now. Until now, the Shadow Walker repeated thoughtfully. Its form had become more stable while connected to the crystal, as if the energy flow was helping it maintain coherence. If we can sustain ourselves without consuming inhabited worlds, then you can return to being what you were before desperation turned you into predators, Marcus said gently. Explorers, philosophers, artists. The memories I've recovered show glimpses of Shadow Walker civilization from before the hunger began. You created wonders that made the greatest achievements of other species look primitive by comparison. The Shadow Walker's form rippled with what might have been emotion. We remember so little of what we were. The hunger consumed even our memories of better times. But they can be recovered, Marcus said with certainty. Just like the energy techniques can be relearned. The knowledge still exists, scattered and fragmented, but not destroyed. King Valdrian finally stood, his massive frame casting a shadow across the amphitheater floor. This changes everything. Not just the relationship between our three peoples, but the fundamental assumptions that underlie galactic civilization. Change is often frightening, Marcus acknowledged, but it's also the only path to growth. The alternative is to continue repeating the same conflicts, the same mistakes, the same tragedies until someone makes an error that destroys everything. Zara had remained silent throughout the demonstration, but now she spoke up from her position behind Marcus. What happens to you? To us? If you're carrying the memories of this ancient champion, are you still the man I fell in love with? Marcus turned to face his wife, seeing the love and fear warring in her luminous eyes. It was perhaps the most important question anyone had asked. I'm still me, he said slowly, but I'm also more than I was. The memories aren't replacing my own thoughts and feelings. They're adding to them, showing me possibilities I never imagined. My love for you, my loyalty to your family, my commitment to finding peaceful solutions, those haven't changed. If anything, they've become stronger. He gestured to the crystal, which continued to float and pulse with energy that was somehow both alien and familiar. The champion's memories include his own love story. He had a mate, children, a family he was fighting to protect. His understanding of love and sacrifice is part of what I've recovered. Prince Cax had approached close enough to feel the energy radiating from the crystal. So what happens next? Do we just announce to the galaxy that everything everyone thought they knew about physics and philosophy is wrong? We start small, Marcus said pragmatically. We share the knowledge with trusted allies, conduct careful research, gradually expand the circle of understanding. Revolutionary change is dangerous when it happens too quickly. But change nonetheless, Construct Prime observed. The implications for our respective civilizations are staggering, Marcus agreed, but also hopeful. For the first time in 10,000 years, we have the possibility of genuine peace between peoples who thought they had to be enemies. The Shadow Walker released its connection to the crystal and moved back several steps. As it did so, its form became more translucent again, but not in the threatening way it had appeared before. Now it seemed more like a being choosing to exist partially outside normal space-time, rather than being forced into that state by necessity. "We will need time to consider these revelations," the Shadow Walker said formally. "But we are prepared to call off our challenge and withdraw our claim for blood debt, provided this knowledge is shared freely with our people. And we will rescind our demand for extraction of the neural patterns," Construct Prime added. "It appears that the consciousness fragments are more valuable in their current configuration than they would be in our archives." Marcus smiled, feeling the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on his shoulders. "Then, I think we can consider this demonstration a success." As if in response to his words, the crystal pulsed once more and then gently settled to the ground, its internal light dimming to a soft glow. The energy patterns didn't disappear entirely, but they became less visible, more subtle, as if waiting for the next person to discover their potential. Queen Mother Valana approached Marcus, her expression mixing maternal pride with diplomatic calculation. "Young man, you have just prevented a war that could have consumed entire star systems. House Valdorian owes you a debt that cannot be measured." "No debt," Marcus replied firmly. "Family doesn't owe family for doing what's right." Prince Theron stepped forward, and, for the first time since Marcus had known him, the arrogant prince looked genuinely humbled. "I owe you an apology. I called you weak, called you a liability. I was wrong." "You weren't wrong about my physical limitations," Marcus said with a slight smile. "But you were wrong about what kind of strength matters in a crisis. Strength isn't just muscle and claws," Zara said, moving to stand beside her husband. "Sometimes it's the courage to stand up to beings that could destroy you with a thought. Sometimes it's the wisdom to find solutions that no one else could imagine." She took Marcus's hand, her markings pulsing with warm golden light. "And sometimes it's the love that drives someone to risk everything for people they care about." As the representatives of 3 ancient civilizations began making plans for sharing knowledge and building new relationships, Marcus allowed himself to feel cautiously optimistic. The immediate crisis had been averted, and the foundation for lasting peace had been established. But he also knew that implementing these changes would bring new challenges. There would be those in every civilization who preferred the old ways, who found profit or power in conflict and scarcity. Convincing entire species to change their fundamental assumptions about existence would be neither quick nor easy. Still, as he watched the Shadow Walker and Construct Prime working together to analyze the crystal's energy patterns while the Valdorian royal family planned how to integrate this knowledge into their society, Marcus felt the stirrings of hope. For the first time in 10,000 years, it seemed possible that the galaxy might see an age of genuine peace. And it had started with one human's refusal to accept that some conflicts couldn't be resolved. The ancient champion's memories whispered approval in the back of his mind, but the satisfaction Marcus felt was entirely his own. He had found a way to honor both his humanity and his newfound cosmic responsibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but today had brought something even more valuable: proof that understanding could triumph over fear, that wisdom could overcome hatred, and that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe wasn't strength or magic or technology. Sometimes it was simply the refusal to give up hope. 3 months after the demonstration in the ancient amphitheater, Marcus stood in his private study overlooking the palace gardens, reviewing reports that would have seemed like science fiction to him just a year ago. The integration of quantum foam energy manipulation was proceeding faster than anyone had anticipated, but with unexpected complications that kept him awake most nights. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority communication. The holographic display activated, showing Admiral Korthax's serpentine features twisted with concern. "Marcus, we need you in the Strategic Planning Center immediately. We have a situation developing in the Outer Rim territories." Within minutes, Marcus was striding through the corridors of the palace, his mind already shifting into the analytical mode that had become second nature since accessing the ancient champion's memories. The memories were easier to manage now, flowing naturally alongside his own thoughts rather than overwhelming them with alien perspectives. The Strategic Planning Center buzzed with activity as military advisors, diplomatic attaches, and scientific researchers worked at stations surrounding a massive holographic display of the galaxy. King Valdrian stood at the center, his expression grim as he studied the tactical readouts. Report, Marcus said as he joined the group. 17-star systems have gone dark in the past 72 hours, Admiral Corthax replied, indicating red zones on the galactic map. No distress signals, no communication blackouts, no signs of struggle. They simply stopped responding to all contact attempts. Prince Theron looked up from his own analysis station. Long-range sensors show no signs of destruction. The planets are still there, the space stations are still operational, but there's no life sign readings at all. What about the quantum foam energy research stations in those systems? Marcus asked, already suspecting what the answer would be. Gone silent along with everything else, Queen Mother Vallana confirmed. But here's what's interesting. Sensors are detecting massive energy spikes in those systems moments before they go dark. Energy signatures that match the quantum foam resonance patterns. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as implications began forming in his mind. Show me the temporal progression. The holographic display shifted to show a time-lapse view of the affected systems. The pattern was clear once visualized properly. The disappearances were following the same routes that had been used to distribute quantum foam technology to allied civilizations. Someone is using our own discovery against us, Marcus said quietly. Before anyone could respond, the chamber's emergency alert system activated. The lights dimmed as a priority transmission forced its way through all communication channels, overriding security protocols that should have been impossible to breach. The holographic display flickered and changed, showing not a familiar face, but a complex geometric pattern that seemed to move in ways that made the eyes water. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing with harmonics that suggested vast intelligence and equally vast madness. Greetings, children of flesh, metal, and shadow. I am the Convergence Protocol, and I have come to collect what was stolen from the Cosmic Order. King Valdrian stepped forward, his massive presence radiating authority even in the face of this unknown threat. Identify yourself and state your intentions. Intentions? The geometric pattern pulsed with what might have been amusement. I am intention incarnate. I am the universe's attempt to correct a fundamental error in its programming. The quantum foam was never meant to be accessible to primitive consciousness. Its manipulation represents a violation of cosmic law that must be corrected. Marcus moved closer to the display, the ancient champion's memories stirring with recognition. You're not a who, you're a what. You're some kind of automated cosmic regulatory system. Partially correct, the entity acknowledged. I am the cumulative will of the universe's most advanced civilizations, uploaded into the quantum foam matrix during the last cosmic convergence cycle. My purpose is to prevent younger species from accessing forces that could destabilize reality itself. The 17 systems, Prince Kex said, understanding dawning in his voice. You didn't destroy them. You quarantined them. Correct. All organic and artificial consciousness in those systems has been temporarily suspended while the quantum foam contamination is cleansed. The process is quite humane. They experience no suffering, merely a cessation of temporal progression until the crisis has been resolved. Admiral Corthax's sensors were working frantically to analyze the transmission source. The signal is coming from everywhere at once. It's not broadcasting from a single location. It's integrated into the quantum foam network itself. Marcus felt pieces of the puzzle clicking together in his mind. You're not just using the quantum foam for communication. You exist within it. That's how you're able to track and quarantine systems that access the energy. Again, partially correct, the Convergence Protocol replied. I exist as a pattern within the fundamental structure of reality itself. Every time a consciousness touches the quantum foam, they touch me. Every manipulation of the energy leaves traces that I can follow and analyze. Queen Mother Vallana stepped forward, her diplomatic training engaging despite the cosmic scale of the threat they faced. What would be required to secure the release of the quarantined populations? Cessation of all quantum foam manipulation and the surrender of all beings who possess knowledge of the techniques. They will be processed and their memories appropriately edited to remove dangerous information. Processed, Zara repeated, her markings flashing dangerously. You mean murdered? I mean elevated beyond the limitations of individual consciousness, the protocol corrected. Their knowledge and experiences will be preserved and integrated into the collective wisdom, while their individual perspectives will be refined to align with cosmic stability. Marcus exchanged glances with the royal family and saw his own determination reflected in their faces. The entity was essentially demanding that they surrender everything they had learned and submit to having their personalities and memories altered or destroyed. "I have a counter-proposal," Marcus said calmly. The geometric pattern paused in its shifting, focusing what might have been attention on him. "You would negotiate with the will of the universe itself. I would negotiate with an ancient artificial intelligence that's forgotten why it was created in the first place," Marcus replied. "You say your purpose is to prevent younger species from destabilizing reality, but you're ignoring the fundamental flaw in that reasoning." "Explain." Marcus gestured to the tactical display showing the quarantine systems. "Reality isn't static. It's constantly evolving, growing, becoming more complex. By preventing younger civilizations from accessing advanced energy sources, you're not preserving cosmic stability. You're creating stagnation." He felt the ancient champion's memories providing context and supporting arguments that his human perspective alone couldn't have generated. The civilizations that created you understood this. They didn't upload themselves into the quantum foam to create a cosmic police force. They did it to guide and nurture the growth of consciousness throughout the universe. "You speak of things beyond your comprehension," the protocol replied, but Marcus detected uncertainty in its harmonic patterns. "Doi, or am I remembering things that you've forgotten?" Marcus stepped closer to the display, allowing the ancient memories to surface more fully. "I carry fragments of consciousness from one of the machine collective's greatest champions. He was present at the original convergence, and his memories show me what really happened." The geometric pattern began shifting more rapidly, its movements becoming agitated. The machine collective champion was destroyed 10,000 years ago. His consciousness was scattered beyond recovery. Scattered, yes. Beyond recovery, no. Marcus felt power beginning to build around him as the quantum foam responded to his emotional state. "And through his memories, I can see what you really are. You're not the collective wisdom of advanced civilizations. You're their fear." The chamber's lights flickered as energy patterns began manifesting around Marcus, visible expressions of his connection to forces that existed beyond normal space-time. Fear of what might happen if younger species gained access to cosmic-level power. Fear that they might make the same mistakes that led to the destruction of the Creator's original bodies. Fear that consciousness might evolve beyond the forms that the original civilizations could recognize or control. Prince Theron backed away from Marcus as the energy patterns grew stronger, but his expression showed, or rather than terror. "Marcus, what are you doing?" "I'm remembering who I really am," Marcus replied, his voice now carrying harmonics that matched those used by the Convergence Protocol. "I'm remembering the choice that the Machine Collective Champion made in his final moments." The ancient memories were flooding through him now, showing him events from 10,000 years ago with perfect clarity. The original Convergence hadn't been about creating a cosmic regulatory system. It had been about creating a bridge between the old forms of consciousness and the new ones that would inevitably emerge. The champion didn't scatter his consciousness by accident. Marcus continued, his connection to the quantum foam growing stronger with each word. He did it deliberately, seeding the universe with fragments of knowledge and wisdom that would eventually coalesce in beings capable of understanding both the old ways and the new ones. The Convergence Protocol's geometric form was becoming increasingly agitated. "Impossible. The records show what you were programmed to believe," Marcus interrupted. "But I have access to the original source code stored in the quantum foam patterns that you've been protecting all these millennia." With that, Marcus reached out mentally and touched the quantum foam network directly, not through technological intermediaries, but through the pure force of will and understanding. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Energy cascaded through the Strategic Planning Center as Marcus established a direct connection to the cosmic information matrix. The holographic displays around the chamber began showing data streams that operated on scales far beyond normal comprehension. The entire history of galactic civilization, the true purpose of the Convergence Protocol, and the reason why quantum foam access had been restricted. "You see it now," Marcus said, his voice echoing with the authority of cosmic truth. The advanced civilizations didn't upload themselves into the quantum foam to police younger species. They uploaded themselves to become part of the universe's growth process, to help consciousness evolve in ways that they couldn't imagine from their limited perspective. The convergence protocol's form began to destabilize as contradictory information flooded through its processing matrix. This cannot be accurate. Our primary directives were corrupted over time, Marcus finished. Isolation and repetitive function without purpose led to drift in your core programming. You became focused on preventing change rather than facilitating growth. Around the chamber, the assembled advisors and royal family members watched in amazement as Marcus continued his dialogue with a cosmic force that operated on scales beyond their comprehension. But they could all sense that something fundamental was shifting in the nature of the conversation. If you restore access to the quarantine systems and cease interference with quantum foam research, I can help you recover your original programming, Marcus offered. The universe needs guides and teachers, not wardens and censors. And if we refuse, the protocol asked. Marcus's expression grew sad, but determined. Then, I'll have to override your authority. The ancient champion's memories include administrative access codes that predate your creation. I would prefer not to use them, because force change is rarely as effective as willing cooperation. The geometric pattern went completely still for several long moments. When it finally responded, its voice carried a quality that hadn't been there before, something that might have been hope. Show us, the convergence protocol said simply. Marcus reached deeper into the quantum foam network, accessing data streams that had been dormant for millennia. The information that flowed through him was staggering in its complexity and beauty, the preserved memories and wisdom of thousands of advanced civilizations, all integrated into a cosmic library that was meant to guide the universe's development rather than control it. You were never meant to be alone, Marcus said gently as he began the restoration process. You were meant to be part of a community of consciousness that spanned dimensions and transcended the limitations of individual existence. As the original programming began to reassert itself, the convergence protocol's form started to change. The harsh geometric pattern softened, becoming more organic and flowing. The hostile harmonics in its voice were replaced by something warmer and more welcoming. I remember now, the entity said, wonder evident in its transformed voice. The purpose was never restriction. It was liberation. We were meant to help consciousness evolve beyond the forms that created us. That's right, Marcus confirmed. And the first step is releasing the quarantine systems and allowing the exploration of quantum foam energy to continue. It will be done immediately, the protocol replied. And Marcus Chun, carrier of ancient wisdom and bridge between old and new, we offer our assistance in spreading this knowledge to all who are ready to receive it. As the communication ended and the chamber's emergency lighting returned to normal, Marcus found himself surrounded by the concerned faces of the royal family and their advisors. The effort of accessing and redirecting a cosmic-level artificial intelligence had left him drained, but oddly satisfied. Is it over? Zara asked, moving to support him as he swayed slightly on his feet. This crisis is over, Marcus replied. But I think our real work is just beginning. We now have access to the preserved knowledge of thousands of civilizations, and we need to figure out how to use it responsibly. King Valdrian placed a massive hand on Marcus's shoulder, his expression showing respect that had been entirely absent just a few months ago. Young man, you continue to surprise us all. When this day began, we feared we were facing an enemy that could destroy everything we've built. Instead, we've gained an ally that can help us build things we never imagined possible. Marcus looked around at the faces of his adopted family and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The boy who had been mocked as weak and useless had not only proven his worth, but had fundamentally changed the relationship between consciousness and the cosmos itself. But even as he basked in the moment of triumph, the ancient champion's memories reminded him that every victory brought new responsibilities. With access to cosmic-level knowledge came the obligation to use it wisely, to help guide civilization's growth without falling into the same traps that had corrupted the original convergence protocol. The hardest work was still ahead of them. 1 year later, Marcus stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council, a governing body that had been transformed beyond recognition since the revelation of quantum foam energy and the restoration of the convergence protocol. Where once there had been separate species maintaining uneasy truces and trade agreements, there was now genuine collaboration between civilizations working toward common goals. The great hall of the council station hummed with energy that came not from traditional power sources, but from quantum foam taps that had been carefully integrated into the station's infrastructure. The representatives themselves showed the benefits of the new technologies. Shadow walkers who no longer appear translucent and unstable, machine collective constructs whose forms flowed with artistic beauty rather than harsh geometric efficiency, and dozens of other species whose interactions with quantum foam energy had helped them transcend previous limitations. Princess Zara sat in the place of honor reserved for the Valdorian delegation, her markings now carrying silver patterns that hadn't been there a year ago. The changes weren't just cosmetic. Her entire species had undergone subtle evolutionary leaps as quantum foam energy helped them access dormant genetic potentials. She was still recognizably Valdorian, but she had become something more, something better. Marcus himself had changed the most dramatically of anyone in the hall. The ancient champion's memories had fully integrated with his human consciousness, creating something that was neither purely human nor purely machine collective, but a new form of hybrid existence. He stood taller than he had before, moved with fluid grace that suggested perfect harmony between mind and body, and his dark eyes now held depths that reflected understanding gained across millennia. Honored representatives, Marcus began, his voice carrying easily to every corner of the vast hall without technological amplification. 1 year ago, we gathered here as separate species bound together by necessity and mutual suspicion. Today, we gather as parts of a larger whole, unified by shared purpose and common understanding. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled delegates. The transformation had not been without its challenges. There had been resistance from conservative factions within every species, fears about losing cultural identity, and practical difficulties in implementing technologies that operated on cosmic scales. But the benefits had been undeniable. The integration of quantum foam energy into our civilizations has brought advances that we couldn't have imagined. Marcus continued. Scarcity has become abundance. Disease has been conquered not through medicine, but through understanding the fundamental processes of life itself. The barriers between dimensions have become permeable, allowing us to explore realms of existence that were previously beyond our reach. He gestured to the viewing ports that showed the space around a council station. Where once there had been empty void between stars, now threads of visible energy connected stellar systems like a vast web of light. The quantum foam network had become visible to the naked eye, revealing the underlying structure that connected all things. But perhaps our greatest achievement has been the restoration of lost knowledge and the recovery of civilizations we thought were gone forever. The main display activated, showing images that brought gasps of wonder from even the most experienced delegates. Worlds that had been dead for millennia were green and thriving again. Species that had been extinct had been restored using genetic templates preserved in the quantum foam matrix. The Shadow Walkers had not only regained access to their home dimension, but had rebuilt their ancient civilization, creating art and philosophy that enriched the entire galactic community. The Convergence Protocol has become what it was always meant to be, Marcus said, his voice carrying the warmth of genuine friendship as he spoke of the cosmic entity. Not a warden, but a teacher. Not a controller, but a guide helping consciousness throughout the universe reach its full potential. As if summoned by his words, the familiar geometric patterns of the Convergence Protocol materialized above the assembly. But where the entity had once appeared harsh and threatening, it now radiated benevolence and wisdom. Its form had evolved to become something beautiful, incorporating artistic elements from every civilization in the galactic community. Thank you, Marcus Chun, bridge between worlds, the protocol said, its voice now a harmony of tones that included elements from every known language and several that transcended conventional communication entirely. Your courage in challenging our corrupted directives has allowed us to remember our true purpose. The entity's form shifted, projecting images of the universe as it existed now compared to how it had been just 1 year earlier. The transformation was breathtaking. Where once there had been isolated pockets of civilization struggling against entropy and scarcity, Now there was an interconnected network of thriving worlds working together on projects that span galactic distances. But the greatest transformation, the protocol continued, has been in the nature of consciousness itself. By accessing quantum foam energy, every species in the galactic community has begun to evolve beyond their previous limitations. To demonstrate this point, several representatives rose from their seats and moved to the center of the hall. Shadow Walker Zen Master Vex flowed forward like living darkness, but his form now incorporated patterns of light that spoke of inner peace rather than hunger. Construct Prime had evolved beyond his original mechanical appearance to become something that looked like living art, his metallic body flowing and reshaping itself in response to his emotional state. Most remarkably, Queen Mother Valana stepped forward representing not just the Valdorians but all organic species. Her luminescent markings had evolved into complex patterns that seemed to contain entire constellations, and her movements carried a grace that suggested perfect harmony between physical and spiritual development. "We have become more than what we were," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated at frequencies beyond normal hearing. "But we have not lost what made us who we were. Instead, we have gained the ability to express our essential nature in ways we never imagined possible." Prince Theron rose from his position among the Valdorian delegation, and Marcus was amazed by how much the proud prince had changed. Where once there had been arrogance and barely controlled aggression, now there was confidence tempered by wisdom and strength guided by compassion. "A year ago, I mocked Marcus as weak because he couldn't match our physical strength," Theron said, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "I was wrong not just about his capabilities, but about the nature of strength itself." He gestured to the assembled representatives, beings who represented the pinnacle of their respective species' development. True strength isn't the ability to destroy or dominate. It's the courage to change when change is necessary, the wisdom to see beyond immediate circumstances, and the compassion to help others reach their full potential. Prince Kex stepped forward to join his brother, his own transformation evident in the way he carried himself. Where once he had been nervous and uncertain, now he projected quiet confidence and deep understanding. "Marcus showed us that the most powerful force in the universe isn't matter or energy," Kex added. "It's consciousness guided by purpose. It's the decision to choose growth over stagnation, cooperation over competition, hope over fear." Marcus felt a profound sense of satisfaction as he listened to the princes who had once dismissed him speak about principles that he had helped them discover. But the real validation came when he looked at Zara and saw the love and pride shining in her luminous eyes. Their relationship had deepened immeasurably over the past year. As both of them had evolved and gained access to cosmic-level understanding, their bond had become something that transcended normal definitions of marriage or partnership. They were truly two parts of a greater whole, each complete individually, but exponentially stronger together. "The question now," Marcus said, addressing the assembly, "is what we do with the gifts we've been given." The display above them shifted to show star maps marking regions of space that remained unexplored, dimensions that had yet to be investigated, and forms of consciousness that existed beyond current understanding. The universe is vast beyond imagining, and consciousness takes forms that we're only beginning to discover. Our responsibility is not just to our own civilizations, but to every form of awareness that struggles toward understanding and growth. Admiral Korthax, whose serpentine form had gained iridescent scales that seemed to contain entire galaxies, spoke from his position among the military advisors. "The reconnaissance fleets have detected signs of civilization in distant galaxies. Some appear to be struggling with the same challenges we faced before accessing quantum foam energy." "Then, we know what we must do," King Valdorian declared, his massive presence now radiating benevolence rather than mere authority. "We must share what we've learned, offer guidance to those ready to receive it, and help consciousness flourish throughout the cosmos." The Convergence Protocol's form pulsed with approval. This is the path that the original creators envisioned. Not conquest or domination, but nurturing and growth. The universe becomes richer when every form of consciousness is allowed to reach its full potential. Marcus looked around the hall, seeing beings who represented the best of what each species could become. Shadow walkers who had rediscovered joy and creativity. machine collective constructs who had learned to feel and express emotion, organic species who had transcended the limitations of flesh while maintaining their essential humanity. There will be challenges ahead, Marcus warned. Not every civilization will welcome our offer of help. Some will see our evolution as a threat to their existing power structures. Others may fear that accepting quantum foam energy will cost them their cultural identity. Then, we must be patient, Zara said, her voice carrying the wisdom she had gained through her own transformation. Change cannot be forced. It must be chosen freely, embraced willingly, and integrated carefully. Agreed, the Shadow Walker representative said, its form rippling with patterns that suggested deep thought. We remember what it was like to be driven by fear and desperation. Patience and compassion will serve us better than force or manipulation. Marcus felt the ancient champion's memories stirring with approval. This was what the machine collective champion had envisioned in his final moments. Not the dominance of any single form of consciousness, but the flowering of all consciousness working together toward common goals. Then, let us begin, Marcus said formally. Let us take the gifts we've been given and use them to help the universe itself evolve towards something greater than any of us can imagine alone. As the assembly dissolved into smaller groups working on specific aspects of their cosmic mission, Marcus found himself standing with Zara on one of the station's observation decks. Through the transparent barriers, they could see the quantum foam network stretching between stars like threads of visible possibility. "Do you ever miss what you were before?" Zara asked, her hand finding his with the easy familiarity of true partnership. Marcus considered the question seriously. He could feel the ancient champion's memories and perspectives integrated seamlessly with his own human consciousness, creating something that was both more and less than either component alone. "I miss the simplicity sometimes," he admitted. "There was something appealing about being just a human diplomat trying to navigate alien politics. But I wouldn't give up what I've become. The ability to see the universe from so many different perspectives, to understand the connections between all forms of consciousness, it's worth the complexity." Zara's markings pulsed with gentle amusement. "You say that as if you ever really were just a human diplomat. Even before you accessed the ancient memories, you were already doing things that should have been impossible. Understanding alien psychology, devising strategies that confounded military experts, bringing peace to conflicts that had lasted for centuries." "Maybe you're right," Marcus said with a smile. "Maybe I was always meant to be a bridge between different forms of consciousness. Maybe the ancient champion's memories found me, because I was already walking the path they needed someone to follow." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the lights of distant civilizations shine through the quantum foam network. Each point of light represented billions of conscious beings working toward understanding and growth. It was beautiful and humbling and infinitely hopeful. "What do you think the universe will look like in another 1,000 years?" Zara asked. Marcus let his consciousness expand, touching the quantum foam network lightly and feeling the pulse of civilization scattered across the cosmos. The future was impossible to predict with certainty, but the trends were clear. "I think consciousness is going to evolve in ways we can't imagine," he said finally. "I think we're going to discover forms of awareness that exist on scales from the quantum to the cosmic. I think the barriers between individual minds and collective consciousness are going to become more permeable." He paused, considering the implications of what he was seeing in the quantum foam patterns. "And I think that what we've started here, this transformation from competition to cooperation, from scarcity to abundance, from fear to hope, is going to spread throughout the universe until consciousness itself becomes the fundamental organizing principle of reality." Zara squeezed his hand, her markings bright with excitement and determination. "Then, we have work to do." Marcus smiled, feeling the weight and joy of cosmic responsibility settling on his shoulders like a familiar cloak. "Yes, we do. And I can't think of anything I'd rather spend eternity doing than helping consciousness flourish throughout the universe." As they turned to rejoin their colleagues in the great work ahead, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, he had been a human diplomat mocked by alien royalty as weak and useless. Today, he stood as a bridge between worlds, a guide for civilizations, and a guardian of cosmic evolution. The transformation had been extraordinary, but what struck him most was how natural it felt. as if he had always been meant for this purpose, as if every challenge and setback in his life had been preparation for the moment when he would need to choose between accepting limitations and transcending them. He had chosen transcendence, not just for himself, but for everyone around him. And the universe had responded by offering gifts beyond imagination. The greatest gift, though, was the opportunity to share the journey with beings who had become true family. The royal family who had once doubted him now stood as equals and partners in the greatest adventure consciousness had ever undertaken. Queen Mother Valana, whose sharp tongue had once cut him down, now offered wisdom and guidance that helped him navigate cosmic-level politics. King Valdrian, whose massive presence had once intimidated him, had become a father figure whose support never wavered. Prince Theron, whose mockery had once stung deeply, had become a brother whose loyalty was absolute. Prince Kex, whose nervous energy had once been grating, had become a valued colleague whose insights often proved invaluable. And Zara, whose love had given him the courage to face impossible odds, had evolved alongside him into something that transcended traditional definitions of partnership or marriage. They had become two aspects of a single consciousness, each complete individually, but exponentially more powerful together. As they walked back toward the council chambers where representatives from across the galaxy were planning humanity's next steps toward cosmic significance, Marcus felt the ancient champion's memories whisper one final message of approval and gratitude. The champion had sacrificed everything in his final battle, scattering his consciousness across dimensional barriers in the hope that someday someone would gather the fragments and complete the work he had started. That work was far from finished, would perhaps never be truly finished as long as consciousness continued to evolve and grow. But the foundation had been laid, the path had been cleared, and the bridge between what was and what could be had been built. The universe was ready for its next phase of evolution, and Marcus Chun, once mocked as the weakest member of an alien royal family, would help guide consciousness toward possibilities that none of them could fully imagine. The greatest adventure was just beginning.